good. So we are Chav Zayin Ada. We're continuing Patorah Da'aba. We're Daf Lamed, Ot Lamed Vav. He's going to start talking about the Ketoret. Give me that over here. He's going to say a small thing regarding this. Thank you very much. So before we start, yes, before we start, we are, today's the Hilula of the Baal Leshem Shvo V'Achlama. You guys all know him. He's Rav Elyashiv's, the late Gedol Hador, his grandfather from his mom's side. The famous story that his daughter couldn't get pregnant. And what happened was that she knew her father was a very big Mekubal and Tzaddik. And the Chafetz Chaim said, the Chafetz Chaim went to see the Baal Leshem Shvo V'Achlama. He went all the way, he was 90 years old, I think, to go visit Leshem Shvo V'Achlama, Rav Shalom Gadaev. And he said, in this world, we could still see him. In the next world, we won't be able to be in his mechitza. So we have to go see him right now. That's what he said about the Leshem Shvo V'Achlama. So his daughter couldn't have kids for many years. And she begged her father to pray to have a child. And that child was Rav Shalom Gadaev, the Gedol Hador of the Ashkenazim. Yeah. And even though the woman, her husband, his last name was not Elyashiv, but he took his last name out of Hokara and out of Ha'aratza, appreciation to him that he was that he blessed him with a child, especially a child like, and Rav Elyashiv, you know, his daughter was Bat-Sheva Kanevsky, right? That was Rav Chaim Kanevsky's wife, right? And Rav Chaim Kanevsky's, I think, there's another way, but anyways, it's all one mishpacha over there. But we see from one bracha, Rav Chaim Kanevsky, how much of the Rav Elyashiv, how much bracha came. Rav Elyashiv was very instrumental of taking out all the ketavim of the Ramchal. He was very, even though he didn't agree with the shita of the Ramchal, he printed many of the books of the Ramchal. And many Sfarim that we have today, he first printed them. And he was very, very big in he has a whole book that talks about the Shpirat HaKelim. We mentioned it many times in the Shiur, that before there was a world of Tikkun, right? Shem Maim, Shem Ben. There was originally just Shem Ben, right? The Nukva, the Mlachim, the Mikra Mlachim, the 7 kings of Edom. And he has a whole book. It's this thick, and it's fine print, and he goes from the beginning of the Mikra Mlachim, the 7 kings of Edom that broke, the vessels shattered, and 288 sparks came from it, till the end. The whole book just on them. And you could spend a whole day, literally, just learning one daf, back and forth, because every daf is 4 amudim. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a very deep sefer. So his chut be Magen Aleinu, and also today is the Hilula of Chaim Silvani, which was the Rosh Halamed Vav Tzadikim from Teman. Very big Mikubal Tzaddik. He raised Rav Mordechai Sharabi when he was a young boy. Rav Mordechai Sharabi was an orphan. He raised him as a young boy for a couple of years. And Rav Mordechai Sharabi always looked at him as his Rebbe, Rav Chaim Silvani. He came with the Ole Teman when where they were put into camps when they came to Israel, and there was a whole parasha that the kids were missing and everything. He was smart enough to leave those camps. He was put in jail a couple of times. But what did I want to say over here? These books over here was gifted to me over here. It's called Sefer Etz HaChaim. We're about 30 days away from the great Hilula of Rabbi Chaim Vital, Lamed Nisan. He passed away the last day of Nisan. We're getting to Rosh Chodesh Nisan right now. Right? So Rav Chaim Vital, why am I showing these Sfarim? It says Etz HaChaim, and you know Etz HaChaim is one book. So I want to tell you guys a little bit of the history, how the Etz HaChaim was written. When the Hakadosh passed away, it's written in Shar Gilgulim. We're going to see it a little bit today. In Lechot HaHilula, we're going to, in the day of the preparation of Rabbi Chaim Vital's Hilula, to learn about it. When the Ari passed away, he told all of his students, you cannot publish your work, or you cannot teach this work. You guys didn't understand what I really said. Only person who has permission to disseminate my work is Rabbi Chaim Vital. I came here just for him. If you guys want to learn with him, if he wants you to learn with him, then you can learn with him. But other than that, you guys can't learn. Some of the students gave in their work, some didn't. Some took the work, went to Mitzrayim and started to teach. Some of the work ended up in Ashkenaz, right? But in general, Rav Chaim Vital didn't allow anybody to learn the work, and we all know he ran away then to Damascus, where he passed away in Damascus. So when he was in Damascus, he got very sick over there. He got very sick, and there was this rabbi, his name was Yoshua bin Nun, Rabbi Yoshua bin Nun. He was big in Kabbalah Ma'asit. This Rabbi Yoshua bin Nun was always begging Rav Chaim Vital to teach him. Rav Chaim Vital had a very small amount of students he would teach, and he wouldn't teach anybody else. And he wouldn't let this Yoshua bin Nun, Rabbi Yoshua bin Nun, learn with him. He wouldn't teach them. And one day, Rabbi Chaim Vital got very sick. He was sick, he was close to death. And this Yoshua bin Nun, he was a rich man, he gave his brother, Moshe Vital, he gave him a lot of money. He said, let me take the ktavim of your brother out of the safe, let me copy them. And in a couple of days, he took a certain amount of sofrim, and it was 600 pages. He was only able to take some of the ktavim. He was afraid that he'll get up from the mitah. And they copied, each sofer copied one page. It's called a Tar Niyarim, the 600 pages. And before anything could happen, Rav Chaim Vital woke up from the bed, he got healed, and he right away put the stuff away. So he shouldn't know that it was taken out, and from them came out what we call Madura Kama, the first version, the first edition of the Kitvei Ha'ari was disseminated in the world. It went first to Yerushalayim. Now, the Rav Chaim Vital didn't know what was happening. Now, what's wrong with those 600 pages that we have? Since they were copying it by hand and they were doing it so fast, many mistakes was written in them. So the Madura Kama is not so reliable, right? But what's positive about them, that we're going to see in a second, Rav Chaim Vital then took all the ktavim of the students and everything, and he put it together, and he wanted to make a set of books, and he called it Etz HaChaim. This Etz HaChaim had 8 gates. 8 gates. What are the 8 gates? So the first one is the actual works of the Ari. That means the Ari Hakadosh wrote some stuff himself. So the first gate is the things my Rebbe wrote himself. The second one is Shara Hagdamot, the gates of the gate of the introductions. Shara Hagdamot. Third gate was Shara Ma'amarim, that's Pirush on the Zohar. The next gate was Shara Psukim, Pirush on Chumash. The next one, this whole book is Shara Kavanot, basically. Gates of Kavanot, Shara Tfilah, I call it. Then is Shara Mitzvot, Kavanot of Mitzvot. Shara Ruach HaKodesh. Once you know all that, then you could have Ruach. Then you could start learning how to have Ruach HaKodesh. And then the last thing, your Shara Gilgul, which was the 8th gate, is going to be, finally you're going to figure out what your tikkun is. Shara HaGilgul. Alright? Why did he put it in that way? Now, these books, these 8 gates over here, Rav Chaim Vital put them together himself. Nobody touched these. This was his, how he wanted to happen, and he called this whole thing Etz HaChaim. Now what happened? He gave these books to his son, Rabbi Shmuel Vital. Now he had many other writings, but he didn't include them in this. He just wanted people to learn this. That was his original plan, how he wanted them to learn the Kitvei Ha'ari. And he didn't teach anybody. He only had a small group of students, and he didn't want to teach anybody else. He didn't want to disseminate it. He said the generation is not yet ready, because the Klippa was still very strong in his time. Nowadays, the Klippa is very weak. What you see, the Klippa is rising up, it's because right before he's going to die, he gets one last wind of breath of life, and he started to be mishtoleh. But anybody who has regular eyes could see that it's all baloney, right? It's not so hard to defeat him in a way, right? And that's why everybody today, or how Yudav Tai says, is shaykh to learn this. Back then they used to learn only after midnight, Shabbat, to be very careful, this and that. But today, you can teach it to any Jew who's married, and he has, he works on his Kedusha V'Tahara. Kedusha V'Tahara is a very big part of this. So this is what Rav Chaim Vital wrote. He gave this to his son, Rav Shmuel Vital. Rav Shmuel Vital, he decided to print these books towards the end of his life, but he never let anybody come inside his house. You couldn't take the books out of his house. If you want to learn it, you would have to come to his house, to his library, and learn it over there. You couldn't take it out of his house. So people wanted to learn this, but nobody could learn this, because you could only learn it in his house. Later on in his life, he printed them for everybody to have, but only in Eretz Yisrael. Look how it was so chamor. You could only learn the works of the Ari in Eretz Yisrael. There was a cherem to take out the Ketvei Ari. So now we have what? We have the 600 pages, Madura Kama, and we have over here the Etz HaChaim that Rav Chaim Vital put together himself. Now, while all this was happening, Rav Chaim Vital had a student. This student was a Marano. He only at the age of 40 years old did he find out he was Jewish. He was a doctor, and he was a genius. His name was Rav Yaakov Tzemach. Rav Yaakov Tzemach, at the age of 40 years old, he became, he found out he was Jewish, he became religious. Some say younger, but the story is at 40. And he became a student of Rav Chaim Vital. He was a student of Rav Chaim Vital, and later on he was good friends with his son Rav Shmuel Vital. He lived in Israel. He had a friend, a very close friend. His friend was the great grandfather of the Chida. His name was of Avraham Azulai, Bala Chesed Avraham. They said, we know Rav Chaim Vital in Tzfat. He buried, when he learned with his Rebbe, before he left to Damascus, he buried a lot of his Ketavim. Before he passed away, he said, I want to bury them. I don't want anybody to touch this certain Ketavim. They're too high level to be learned. We don't want anybody to touch these. He didn't add them in here. And he buried them in the Beit HaKvarot, in the Makom HaGeniza. There was a big Geniza pile in the Beit HaKvarot, and he hid them over there. He hid them. No. So he didn't bury it with him. He buried them in the Beit HaGeniza and the Beit HaKvarot. I know some editions of the story say that he buried it with him. So Rav Yaakov Tzemach and Rav Avram Azulai, the great-grandfather of the Chida, came together and they started to make Yichudim Noraim and Shelat Chalom, and they asked permission from Rav Chaim Vital to dig out these Ketavim. And they dug it out and they came out with 5 books. They found 5 books inside the Geniza. Some of it were missing, some of the pages were destroyed, and those 5 books is the one that almost everybody learns today, which is so funny because almost nobody learns the Seder that Rav Chaim Vital put together. Everybody learns the book that he buried. What is that? Otzrot Chaim. First and foremost, they found Otzrot Chaim, and then they found over there another version of Shara Kavanot called Olat Tamid. Very small book, but it's another version. Then they found another 2 books, Adam Yashar and Kihilot Yaakov. That's 4 books. What was the 5th book that they found? There was another book that they found. 5 altogether they found. So these books that they found, Rav Yaakov Tzemach printed them separately and he disseminated it. Rav Yaakov Tzemach had a student called Rav Meir Papirash. He didn't have these books, Rav Meir Papirash. He said, I want to make a book. I'm going to call it also Etz HaChaim. And I'm going to put together all the books, the main ones that were buried, and the 600 pages that they had. Remember the 600 pages? I'm going to take the 600 pages, I'm going to take the Otzrot Chaim, I'm going to take Adam Yashar and Kilot Yaakov, and I'm going to put it all into one book. So whoever who doesn't have this could learn that. And I'm also going to call it Etz HaChaim. And that's how Derech Etz HaChaim came out to be, from Rav Meir Papirash. And that's the Etz HaChaim everybody learns today. Or Rav Meir Papirash. Okay? And then afterwards, so we have so far what? We have the 600 pages, we have Otzrot Chaim, we have the Etz HaChaim that the Rav Chaim Vital put together himself, and we have the Derech Etz HaChaim that who put together? Rabbi Meir Papirash from the books that he found buried.
Those are those?
That's the Etz HaChaim. No, you see what it says there, Etz HaChaim?
So it's not the same as this?
It's not this. It's not this. None of these books are inside that. Those books are made from the buried books.
600 pages aren't in here?
No, the 600 pages are in there. That's the Madura Kama. It's called Chelek HaDrushim, right? Or Chelek HaLikutim.
Well, didn't Rav Chaim Vital put himself the 600 pages in here?
No, Rav Chaim Vital took all of his work and he picked and chose what he's going to put together. You understand? This is the book. These books are the most trustworthy books. Why? They're the handwritten. This is what Chaim Vital meant to be taught. Right? Those books is what Rav Meir Papirash put together because he didn't have these books. Understand? The irony is that everybody learns that. You understand? Nobody learns this. Then later on, they found another version. This is the last book that was found called Milvot Sha'arim. In the handwritten of Rav Chaim Vital himself. And that people learn separately too. Okay? So all these Sfarim were taken out in different editions and different versions today. So when a person learns, for example, the Etz HaChaim, sometimes he finds contradictions, but these contradictions are not really contradictions. Why? Some things Rav Chaim Vital didn't want you to learn. You understand? Some things were from the 600 pages that have mistakes. You understand? So if you really want to find the makor, what the Ari said, you have to go back to the original, the derech, the Etz HaChaim itself, which is the most trustworthy books. You understand? Rav Chaim Vital put together himself. Okay, so that's this Etz HaChaim that I have over here. So Rav Meir Papirash, because he didn't have Shara Kavanot, he decided to make another Shara Kavanot. And he called it Pri Etz HaChaim. Pri Etz HaChaim was put together by Rav Meir Papirash too. And that Pri Etz HaChaim was printed for the first time in Ashkenaz. And the Baal Shem Tov learned from the Pri Etz HaChaim, Rav Shabtai Merashkov learned from the Etz HaChaim, the Rav Yaakov Kopel learned from the Pri Etz HaChaim. That was their Shara Kavanot. They didn't have in Ashkenaz Shara Kavanot. Because remember, it was only in where? In Israel. You couldn't take it out of Israel. There was a cherem who takes out the works of the Ari from Israel. So they didn't have, and they for sure didn't have this. They had the Derech Etz HaChaim of who? Of Meir Papirash. That's what they used to learn from. Understand? So all this is a very, whoever knows the history behind it, how it came out to be, he knows how to navigate between the different Sfarim. So it's very interesting to know how the Sfarim, how Hashem wanted it to be learned. But the very interesting thing is, when the Rashash, and this is what makes the whole difference over here, when Rabbeinu Shalom Sharabi, the Rashash, came to write the Nahar Shalom, Rechavot HaNahar, he used all the books. He didn't just say learn from Etz HaChaim or Chaim Vital or Derech HaChaim. He used everything, and he said all of them are from the Ari Hakadosh, and they're all Bar Samcha. They're all from the works of the Ari, and the only reason people make a mistake, things are contradiction, because they don't know the depth of the works of the Ari. And the Rashash came and tried to make, and basically the Rashash's chidush was that the main point of knowing all of this, Etz HaChaim, Patorah Da'aba, all this stuff over here, the whole point is not to know your Gilgul. This is going to come to a person naturally, that's the whole point. Not to get to Ruach HaKodesh or prophecy, which is supposed to be something that happens naturally when you're mizachech yourself so much. The point of all this is to know how to serve Hashem. And that's why the biggest shar out of all of them is what? Shara Tefillah, Shara Kavanot. And the whole point of the Rashash was to make the whole Etz HaChaim, he said, the Rashash's chidush was, it's not just Shara Kavanot we have to use. Because the whole point the Ari did all of this was to use everything for Kavanot. So the Rashash took everything and he turned it into a tefillah. Kavanot a tefillah. You understand? So when you say Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam She'akol Niyeh B'Dvaro, what you're really doing is you're using the whole Etz HaChaim. Because some of the Kavanot of the Rashash is not in Shara Kavanot. Where is it? In Etz HaChaim. Okay? And how do we know the Rashash learned from all this? Because we have his Hagaot on all the books. We have his Hagaot on the Pri Etz HaChaim. He has one Hagah on that. We have his Hagaot on the Pri Etz HaChaim. We have his Hagaot on Shara Kavanot. Hagaot is his footnotes. So we see that he learned from all of this. Okay? Then there were different rabbis that lived at the same time. They also wrote their own Shara Kavanot. And one of them was a very big Mekubal, Tzaddik Kadosh Elyon. His footnotes and his commentaries in every single Osrot Hayim. I love his Pirushim the most because he has a lot of Pirushim on Derech Tanakh, on the Psukim of the Torah. It's called Rabbi Natan Shapira. Not to be confused with the Megalei Amukot. They have the same name, they're both from Krakow. Natan Shapira was a Chacham Ashkenazi from Poland, from Krakow. He was a Chacham Elyon Kadosh Meod. He wrote the Baal Matzat Shimurim, he wrote Meyayin HaMishumar, and he has Hagaot on all that Tzachim, and he wrote his own Shara Kavanot, he put together, and it was called Me'orot Natan. But the Me'orot Natan is almost identical to the Pri Etz HaChaim of Meir Papirash, and many people say they wrote it together. They were learning from one another, they had the Ketavim at the same time. So it's very interesting how all this came out to be, and today, Baruch Hashem, we're so lucky in this generation, these books wouldn't leave Yerushalayim once upon a time. And it's in your library. It's something lo muvan me'elav. Okay, let's go to the Patorah. So I don't know if we're gonna take this out of the shiur, put this as its own introduction, but introduction to the Kitvei Ha'ari. But what minute is this? 19. So I'll tell him at the 19th minute, just take it out and put it as its own video. Maybe stop it.